Welcome to the Dream Team Academy podcast, where we help you make your business dreams come true.
Hello and welcome to another Dream Academy podcast. Tonight, or this morning, or whatever time of the world you are listening to this in, we have a very interesting guest from the United States. He is a software engineer who has become a coach and is now becoming a businessman. And he's going to be sharing his journey with us today. He also likes to explain that he was an introvert who didn't actually believe in relationships. And yet now he has a beautiful and extremely happy marriage. So I'd like to welcome and introduce Abhishek Joshi. Hi, Abhishek. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm here in the UK. You're there in the US. So are you East Coast or West Coast?
I'm on the West Coast.
You're on the West Coast. You're a long way away from me. Okay, so we've got you here tonight on the Dream Academy podcast because we're trying to understand what motivates people to want to create their dream business. And we're talking to people about how they made their dream business or why they're making their dream business. So let's go and start with your story. What brings you to being a businessman today? Now, you started off as a software engineer. So what made you want to be a software engineer? Let's start there.
Actually, I found it very interesting. That's how I got into it. I had a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun programming. I really enjoy myself. And that's what got me in, because actually originally I was in pure electrical, where it's all about the power grid and all that sort of engineering. But I didn't find that too interesting. And then programming is what actually called out to me. So that was the next stage. And I was very fascinated by machine learning and artificial intelligence, the norm that's going on now. And that's what actually got me more into this field. And as I've gone on, the AI part has kind of just not been the focus. It's just been the programming.
So is it quite creative program? Now, look, excuse my ignorance, but I am not a maths and physics person. So I'm assuming there's an element of using code to create. Do you think there's a creative element that you enjoy?
Yeah, of course, because creativity comes everywhere, right? Even when you're working with these machines, you step into situations where it's beyond the code. It's beyond something simple. It's about how do you design something that will work in the long term.
Bit like, how do you design a relationship that will work in the long term?
Yeah.
So maybe this we start to get the bigger picture. We see why you've become quite good at this. Okay, so you became a programmer, and you work. In fact, do you still work in programming at the moment? Yeah, you are still working in programming. Okay, but you at some point you decided to become a coach. Now, how does a programmer decide to become a coach? Now, what did you just wake up one day and go, I want to do this other thing as well? Tell me, how does that start?
It's a curious transition. So I was actually, I first wanted to become a businessman. Then I got into a coach, and then I actually stepped into business. So the way it happened was I really wanted to go back to my home country and do things for people, right? Because I wanted to show what's possible for the average guy to become. For anyone who's just feels like they're the average guy, you can go anywhere you want. And I had these big dreams and I really wanted to go back. But somewhere along the journey, I realized it was a little more about my ego that was hurt long ago. And as I started discovering it, I kind of became a little detached with becoming a businessman, right? I let the ego go off, because initially it was about, let me do this so that my ego is going to feel great. But as I was going through the process, I kept reading in different places that leaders are readers. And so I started getting into reading and slowly stepped into personal development. And I found that fascinating. And it didn't take me long to just dive into it. And once I dove into it, I actually, for the first time, I heard about Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
And the reason I actually explored a little more of Tony Robbins was because my dad read books about him. And he told me it helped him a lot during some of his anxious and panicky stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I started listening to him more, and I was very curious about what's going on. And that was the first time I realized I could have a profession of just helping people.
Gosh, yeah.
It wasn't even a concept to me until that point that I could have a livelihood helping people.
Yeah.
But as soon as I recognized that it's a possibility, there was no question in me. So I was like, yes, I want to do this. And
it pulled you, it grabbed you and it pulled you into it. It's like, oh yeah, this is definitely for me. It fits.
Yeah, definitely. This sounds like where I want to go. And on the process, I wanted to become a coach, but there were a lot of intermediate steps, right? So I was in a visa, right? So I couldn't start something different.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, until things got cleared out, I was actually just working on building myself. I was learning and going through my own personal development and just growing internally, right? So that was what I was going through. And along that journey is where I actually met my wife. And we both actually really work hard on our marriage because we do not allow the standard to dip. It has to be at a high standard. But coming back, as I kept going, I also wanted the freedom of doing things on my own, in my own control, and just wanting to go do what I would want to do. So that's how the coach plus businessman situation.
So, and did that happen after you were married or before you were married? I'm just curious.
It was a process somewhere in between.
Okay, because the reason I was asking is I think sometimes, when you fall in love with somebody and you want to work on your relationship, you realize that having the freedom of being self-employed enables you to go travel together, do things together, raise your family, be more flexible. So I think it sort of starts to add, it makes more sense. If you both
definitely.
have jobs, you're being pulled that way by your jobs, and when you can do other things. So
yeah,
that's
in that regards, sorry to cut you off. In that regards, I would say that marriage was like an added bonus that I can give more freedom. I could have more freedom on how I would work on my marriage. But I also wanted the freedom to invest my time, invest my resources, build something that the way I would want it built, right? And have in the mission I wanted to do. Basically, that was what it was, right? So yeah.
So, okay. So you decided to become a coach because how did you start your process? I think a lot of people think, oh, it'd be lovely to be a coach, but there's lots of different modalities to coaching. So you obviously were thinking maybe life coaching to begin with, because you told me that you love the personal development and Tony Robbins stuff. But I now know that you are a relationship coach. So how did you make that journey to being a relationship coach?
So originally, as you mentioned, I actually wanted to be a life coach, right? And we can go into the details of how you can get into the process of becoming a coach. But what drew me into this was actually my own personal challenges as I went through life, because it was like life's gift to me. And I had to work on myself as the marriage was growing, right? So overcome my own challenges so that I could add value to the marriage. And that was the key. And to understand that you are sometimes the bottleneck of what's not working.
Right. And so what drove you to then want to do that for others? I mean, what, that there's the thing about working on your own relationship and understand, but like, what makes you want to help others with that?
Because I wanted to always help people, right? The dream is to help people. And I know how much pain they go through because I went through that pain, right? I thought things could not work out at some point. And
in relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to go from that to actually ending up having the happy side of it, I realized what it takes. And it's often not what we think. We think that, oh, our spouse or our partner needs to be perfect. No, it's the combination that needs to work well. Both of you, when you do your part, is when it works well.
Oh, how lovely. So I've never got the relationship bit right. So I'm like very envious. I never quite got that right, but there you go. So maybe one day I'll have to hire you for a relationship coach. But Abhishek, so you decided to be a relationship coach. You now decided that you've learned things, you had something to offer. So now help people out. What did you do? What were the steps that you have taken to, you obviously worked on yourself, you made notes, you were aware of your relationship, but that's not, there's another step on developing yourself as a coach. So for the listeners, what are some of the things that you would recommend any budding coach, whether they want to be a health or relationship or wealth coach in some way? What are the steps that you would recommend from your own experience? What has worked for you, and also what hasn't worked? Have you had some bad experiences where you thought, well, I wouldn't recommend you do that? Or what's good and what's bad? Help us out. Give us some of your stories.
So the journey to becoming a coach has been interesting, right? So as I told, I worked on myself a lot because felt like I couldn't start the journey. And then I actually went through certain amount of training to become something called an ICF coach. And it was actually recommended to me by my mentor because a lot of people, you need to learn certain skills of listening, being present, creating a space where the person you're helping can open up. Because if you keep interrupting or if you keep doing certain things, they will not have the space to create the breakthrough for themselves. And that's really important. You need to know when you need to step in against when you need to let them take the driver's seat. And if you can just be the fuel of their car, they will enjoy it. So sometimes it's like, maybe it's a self-driving car you just give them. They feel like they're driving it, but you're the one helping them out. So sometimes it's just understanding what's your role, how you go about it. That's very important when you're helping people. And then I used my experience of what I went through the relationships in marriage. I was very interested in learning about it because somehow I kept running into a lot of videos of Tony Robbins around relationships. And I learned a lot about what does not work, what are the reasons they work. And in my own personal experience, I've seen how even few words, one or two words, can change from being, oh, that's cool, versus how could you say this to me? Yeah. So it's really powerful. So anyone can be a coach. You don't need to go through a course, right? But going through something to understand what could be the pitfalls is helpful. It adds that additional layer so that you know how you can work with someone. And once you know that, you can add in your experience, your own personal thoughts, nuggets, everything, and just elevate their experience.
I see you're very passionate about it. I can tell. And that's probably part of why I know you're going to be an incredibly good coach, because there's a passion, there's a love, and there's I get from you a real commitment to serve. And I think that's an essential element for a coach. I mean, it's an essential element in all business, because all businesses solve problems. It's more obvious in the coaching business because it's a very direct, it's like, what can I help you with? What's your problem today? But whether you're selling someone a car, which solves the problem of how they're going to get to A to B the way they like, or a holiday, it's all solving their problems. And I mean, that's what I love business. Like, I find it fascinating, how you basically find people's challenges and create solutions, and then offer them the solution. And whether, from all sales, I was in advertising when I was very young, and and how I look back at the history of things like orange juice, which was it was where they had like rotten oranges, and they were going off, they didn't know what to do with them, so they made this juice, and then all of a sudden that became the new thing, and someone created orange juice, and now we have orange juice around the world. It's just extraordinary how people think, well, there's a problem we have. In that case, it wasn't even to serve people. There's a problem, we have these oranges, what can we do with them? We've got this, someone else's problem with rotten oranges, and now we create orange juice and create a need, and people need orange juice now. So absolutely fascinating, the psychology of how things get created. So, okay, so you're now developing yourself as a relationship coach, and you are currently a relationship coach. You're in development, you're starting out. So how comfortable a journey is that for you? Where do you find the challenges in developing your business? Because that's what we're here to learn. We're here to understand, where do we get stopped in our journey to create our dream business, and what advice can you, from your experience, say, like, well, when it feels bad, keep going? Do you have any stories like that?
Yeah, I have so many, because every day sometimes is a story for me. So I have been in business for a few months, right? And you get to learn so much, because at the end of the day, when you're providing a service to someone, it is something that they feel will be valuable to them, right? So stepping into the person who's going to buy what they want to buy from you, and thinking from their perspective, what would they spend X amount of money on, right? Both, you can have a $300 phone, you can have a $1,000 phone. Why does someone pay $1,000 to the other phone? In some cases, they pay it when they don't have money. They find a way to pay that. Why? So if you can go into that level of understanding, what are you actually meeting for them, they will pay you, right?
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting journey, and some of the things I've learned is just fascinating. For me, the thing I'm trying to conquer right now is time, actually. So how do you give the time you want to give to your business, to your marriage,
Yes.
and to yourself at the end of the day?
Yes.
Right. And it's really fascinating, this journey, as you keep going through it.
Yeah.
And one of the realizations I had recently was actually money is like time. Some people have fear of not having enough money. Some people have fear of not having enough time. Or some people can't create boundaries around money, or can't create boundaries around time. There's a parallel around it. And at the end of the day, it's a feeling. It's not reality. It's how you've perceived the reality. So that's kind of what I can give you. I'm sure I have many more things I can give you. Just
Well, the time one is really important, particularly because you're launching your new business, being very sensible. You haven't let go of your other work yet, so you're trying to do both. And I think this is where so many want-to-be entrepreneurs get stuck, because at some point you have to let go, or at what point do you feel, I have enough business that I can let go?
Yeah.
And I mean, you're not there yet, but obviously you're probably starting to look at that. At what point will I not be trying to do both? And I don't know if there's, I think it depends on one's risk aversion, you know. I have no day job. And you know, so my academy, my Dream Team Academy is, you know, it's feast or famine. I mean, I don't pay the bills if I don't have clients. But actually, and I've thought about, you know, well, wouldn't it be nice if I just had a nice sort of little income and then had my coaching? But but then every time I think about that, I want to actually be sick, because I really am not very employable. And I've only been employed for probably 3 or 4 years in my entire life. I've been self-employed the rest of the time. So that shows that I have quite a big tolerance for being uncomfortable, because when we're self-employed, there's the level of uncomfortable, but that's the price I'm willing to pay for the freedom that I have. But I'm not married, so I don't have a partner, so that makes it easier because I make my own choices. But I do have a family of horses, and I have to take care of them. So that's like, those are like my children, and I do have a son as well, and he has to be taken care of as well. So it's a big problem for entrepreneurs. You know, it's like, when do you kind of let go of the training wheels and fly solo? And I guess everyone has to answer that for themselves and work out on their own comfort level. Do you have, I mean, have you thought ahead and thought, do you have a, I mean, you don't have to tell us the number, but do you have a sum in mind? When I'm making this consistently, I will feel that I can do this full time? Or do you actually want to try and maybe do both? I mean, do you think that you would just like to be, no, you don't, okay.
I'm pretty sure as soon as
you're
I
pretty
have
sure.
a number in my mind, I'll be heading to doing this full time, because I'm really committed to it. I think you were asking me before, how do people keep going when it's so challenging? And there were many moments which were really difficult for me, right? Like, I felt like I could not get up tomorrow and do this again. And one is, I have an amazing wife, right? She keeps me going when I think I can't. And secondly, I was watching something by Alex Hermosi, right? And he was saying, can you do something for 10 years without expecting results? And to me, it was a hard yes, right? If you're guaranteed results at the end of 10 years and you don't see anything until that point, at least this is the way I perceived it. I don't know if this is what he intended, but this is what I did. If you can go for 10 years without seeing anything, do you still have that commitment? And every day when I wake up, the answer is yes. That's what keeps me going, because I have to figure it out. I want to figure it out. There are many out there who really need help. So I'll keep going until I get the answers.
Yeah, and that's one of my sayings, is you never ever fail until you quit. So if it takes you 10 years to work out how to have your perfect business, your perfect dream business, if it takes 10 years, if it takes 20 years, if it takes you your whole life, you haven't failed, you know. And you know, and depending on what your beliefs are, how many lives you got, maybe you don't fail, even if you don't do it in this life, but let's not go there. But I mean, that's very much where I stand, and I think it's much better to live a life doing your fullest to be your best and create your best business than to play it safe. But but we're, us people that want to help others, we're a bit different, but we have to be passionate about it, because you need that passion. You clearly do. And what I love about you, Abhishek, is you're passionate about helping. And I went live earlier on today, as anyone here who sees me on Facebook, I'm always going live, and I was talking about, there are a lot of coaches out there who see their clients as just a means to making money, and they give coaching a bad name. And the good ones are fantastic, and there's quite a few not so good ones. And I was telling clients to actually learn to be aware, do their due diligence, be alert, because you can sort of tell, you can get a sense, use your gut. Is the person really caring? If they are they actually talking to you and customizing, at least in some way, what they offer to you, because they're not just cookie cuttering the service. So I can tell that you're not going to be a cookie cutter coach. I can tell that already. Come on then. So tell me some secrets about relationships. Go on, give me 3 secrets to the brilliant relationship, because I know you've got some.
Number 1, don't measure. If you keep asking how much your spouse is doing for you, and you keep saying, oh, I'll do just as much, you will have more frustration. Because as long as you're measuring, you think there is some level that is enough. But when you want to make something work and you want to make your partner or your spouse really happy, you just give. It's like your business. You are the last one who gets paid. You give it to the business or your marriage first. You go all in. And that's when humans are like that. They're going to give back. Don't measure. If you measure, you're asking for trouble.
I love that. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2.
Number 2 is pay attention to your words. Because what you think you're saying is not what your partner's hearing. You may think they got what you said, but they may not. And that's something I've learned so many times, so many ways. And you always grow, because every word has a different meaning to a different person. And be very careful about it, because it may leave them feeling like you didn't do what they thought you would, right? Or you may feel like they didn't do what you thought they would. And when you get to that point, make sure to speak to your partner or spouse about what you thought they were going to do and what they actually did, and why was that? Because you may have an amazing revelation at the end of it.
I love it. Very, very, very good advice. Okay, come on, one more.
Okay, one more. What can I give for one more? Never put down your partner. Never put down your spouse. Hold them up on their worst days, and even further up on their best days. Because if they can't share their happiest moments with you, or their saddest, or their scariest, or their most boring, or any of that with you, there is a certain thing they cannot do. It's different to set, okay, this is not something that lights us up, which you both can discuss and figure out, right? You don't need to be everything to your spouse. That's not the message. But you need to create a space where they can have what they need in the marriage with you. And if that means you need to learn and grow in some area so that that feels fulfilling, that effort.
Interesting. And see how, I mean, those are just magic bullets. I mean, and I think probably people are listening to you and going, oh yeah, that's obvious, but it's sort of hiddenly obvious, right? If we think about it, it's obvious, but we don't think about it. And we're so quick to judge, and we're so quick to say, oh God, you didn't do that again, you never do that, or to say something harsh. Relationships need to be treated with such treasure. But the fact that because we're close, we're like, oh well, there's my best friend, then we just sort of dump on each other as well, which is different, being able to share anything you want, but we need to be able to keep it precious. Such important keys. So now just the last little thing I want to do right now, if I can hold you for a few more minutes, is so you've just given us some brilliant points about relationships. So how does a coach give us just a few tips on taking your knowledge, which you've clearly got as a relationship coach, and moving it into, do you have a coaching program? Do you do a program? Yeah. So So how have you created that? How did you work on?
Yeah, so basically, I learned a lot from Tony Robbins and I added certain things of my own, right? And actually from different people, because it's very important. You need to keep evolving and you can do more to people or to your spouse, right? So when I work with someone, whether it's a couple or one of the spouses, it is first helping them understand what's not working, right? That's the number one understanding you need to do. And I use something called the 6 human needs to go over it. There are many YouTube videos and stuff around it. So it really helps them know what's not working right now and what could make it work, right? It gives the direction for what's not working and what could make it work. But between this journey of what's not working and what could make it work, there are many bridges that people follow, right? There are beliefs, there are rules, there are expectations, behaviors, past traumas, which are all slowly just taken apart so that when you're with this person, you're truly with them and you can bring in your number 10 level with them, or number 1 level if you had to take it in a different way. So you can give everything you can without fear, without having to hold back anything, right? So you can learn how to set boundaries sometimes. You can learn how to create the rules that will make you feel like, wow, this was amazing. I'm so glad he or she did this. You can plan trips where it's like, okay, this is how I'm going to be on the trip. It takes that level of understanding to make a great marriage. You can even visualize how you're going to be in that moment with them, what's going to light them up, and you're always looking to do something different, always create the surprise. For me, I'll give you an example. If I go to a grocery store, it could be the simplest way. Buy something she didn't expect, or buy more of something than she asked for, or on the way, just fill the gas for her in her car. Just the small things, they go a long way because it helps them feel seen, understood, and just cared for. Right.
Careful, massive. As a woman, I would vouch for that. Yeah. So any other blokes listening, yeah, he's absolutely right. Go the extra mile, give us the little things. And it is the little things like, having my little thing. It's almost like a love script is, like a love language that for me, if someone makes me a cup of tea. So that is a little thing, but I always feel really served if someone brings me a cup of tea. Or, if I'm cold, someone brings me a blanket. It's just those little needs, isn't it, that make a difference. So it's such a wonderful area to work in. Well, I think you are going to be an extraordinary relationship coach, Abhishek, and I really hope that you come back in a year's time and tell us how your business is going and what level. I expect you'll be on stage with Tony Robbins doing relationship coaching with him by then.
Oh, that would be amazing. Thank you.
So you are going to send me all your information so that our viewers, if they're interested if they have relationship questions and want to join your group or even come coach with you, make sure you give me all the information. And then everyone, that will be down below in the show notes. And so it just remains me to say thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today and sharing us
I had a great time.
Oh, good, Abhishek. Thank you so much. And we will see you in a year's time.
Well, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Dream Team Academy podcast. Tune in for our next podcast soon, where you too can find out how you can make your business dreams come true.